Good evening, guys. In the last class, we discussed how to change embedded container from Tomcat to Jetty. How to change embedded container from Tomcat to Jetty? So we need to exclude Tomcat starter from web starter in the pom.xml, and we need to configure Jetty starter in the pom.xml so that Tomcat will be removed as embedded container and Jetty will come as an embedded container. Then we can run our boot application. Then after, we discussed about what is response body annotation. What is response body annotation? What is the purpose of response body? Right. If you want to send some direct response from your controller method, then you can go for response body annotation. So now here in the Spring, when we are developing our, in the web application, we are going to create two types of classes to handle our request and response. One is controller, another one is REST controller. What is the difference between controller and REST controller? Controller will return view names, REST controller will return direct response. Earlier, REST controller annotation was not available. They used to develop distributed applications by using controller plus response body. Controller plus response body is called as REST controller. When your class is a REST controller, that controller method will return direct response to the client. When we need to return direct response to the client, when we are developing web services, when we are developing distributed applications, we are going to return direct response to the client. That will start from Monday. Okay, fine. After that, we have seen what is URL ambiguity in the web MVC. What is URL ambiguity in the web MVC? Here, whatever the methods that we are writing, every method should have a unique URL pattern. If you write two methods with the same URL pattern, if you write two methods with the we'll talk that. Right. Now here, so we are trying to understand what is that URL ambiguity. When multiple methods are having same URL pattern, then there is a chance of getting ambiguity problem. How to resolve that ambiguity problem? We need to make sure every method, every controller method, REST controller method having unique URL pattern. Suppose if people are working from different locations, there is a chance of writing the same URL pattern. To avoid that problem, we are going to use class level URL pattern and method level URL pattern. How to specify class level URL pattern? To specify class level URL pattern, we are going to use request mapping annotation, right? Request mapping annotation, you can write at the class level and you can write at the class level as well as at the method level also. We discussed the summary of the web MVC, whatever we have learned there. Okay. Today, another very important session, that is exception handling in the web MVC. So when our application is executing, getting the exceptions is very common. Now, let us see how to handle exceptions in our web MVC. Exception handling in web MVC application. Now, guys, first of all, what is exception and how to handle that exception in the Java? Yes, exception nothing but unwanted, unexpected, and unwanted situation is called as exception. Now, when our application is executing, there is a exception. For example, here my method is available. When this method is executing, there is a chance of getting some exception. Currently in this method, logic is not available, but in the real time, our methods will contain the logics. When that logic is getting executed, there is a chance of getting the exception. Unexpected and unwanted situation is called as exception. When exception occurs, our programs will be terminated abnormally. What is the meaning of abnormal termination? You see here. Now here I am writing integer I is equal to 10 by 0. I'm writing integer I is equal to 10 by 0. Whenever there is integer I is equal to 10 by 0, arithmetic exception will occur. When arithmetic exception occurred here, the remaining lines will execute or the remaining lines will not execute. Remaining lines are not going to execute. Let us check this. Now, here I am having greet controller and message controller. Greet controller, and let me make it as welcome controller. Greet controller and welcome controller is available. Or else, let me create a separate project, guys. File, new, Spring Starter project. Let me give the name as 21 WebMVC application. 21 WebMVC exceptions, exception handling. Got it? I want to implement exception handling logic in my web application. Right. Click on next. I'm going for Timeleaf, Lombok, DevTools, Web. I'm taking several dependencies. DevTools dependency I'm taking, Lombok dependency, Timeleaf, and Web. DevTools is used to restart the server when we have some code changes. Lombok, setters and getters, Timeleaf, presentation, Web to develop web application. Next, finish. Good. Now, so let me create one let me create one controller class in this project, guys. So here, let me make one controller. Just I'm making this as demo controller. That's it. Some demo controller I'm creating. I want to make this class as a controller. For that, I'm using @controller annotation. I want to send UI page. Right. So let me write a method, public string get message. Public string get message. So here we are taking string message is equal to some good evening. Good evening message I want to send from this method. Okay. Then I want to return a page called index page. Return, I'm taking this as a index. Return index. Now, this message I want to send from my controller method to UI. Can you tell me how to send the data from controller to UI? By using model object. Let me take model object as a parameter. Public string get message, I'm taking model object. String message good evening, return index. Now here, how to map this method to get request? For that, we are going to use one annotation called @get mapping. Now, slash is the URL pattern I'm giving. Slash is the URL pattern I'm giving. Perfect. Now here, I want to set this data to the UI. Model.add attribute key, comma, value. Key is message, value is also message. Or else let me change it to message text. I'm changing this to message text. Now, create one template file. Go to main resources, templates, new HTML file I want to create in the templates. Now, give the name for that as index.html. How to access that file here? How to access that message here? Come on. XML ns th is equal to www.timeleaf.org. I want to access that message. Okay. th:\text is equal to $of_message. th:\text is equal to $of that message. I want to print that message. That's it. Now, right click, run as boot application. I'm running my boot application. Go to console, application started. What is the embedded server? By default, we are getting Tomcat as a embedded server. Now go here, access our controller method, localhost :8080. Check it. Are we able to access this? Yes, our controller is working as expected. Controller is working as expected. Now, let us assume that in my controller, there is some logic available. In my controller, there is some logic available. Integer I is equal to 10 by 0. Integer I is equal to 10 by 0. I'm trying to divide number with the 0. When I divide number with the 0, arithmetic exception will occur. When I send a request to my method, it is processing my request or it is throwing the exception? It is throwing the exception, arithmetic exception. Whenever exceptions occurred in our classes, whenever exception occurred in our class, then what will happen? When exception occurred, what will happen? My program executed successfully. My program terminated abnormally. So here, unexpected and unwanted situation is called as exception. What is happening when exception occurs? When exception occurs, program will terminate abnormally. What is the meaning of abnormal termination? Stopping in the middle. Suddenly, that program will stop. Here, I'm having few lines of code in the method. All the lines of code is not executing. Once this line is executed, there is an exception. The remaining lines are not executed as expected. That is called abnormal termination. Unexpected, unwanted situation is called as exception. When exception occurs, program will terminate abnormally. Now here, whenever exception occurs, I want to handle the exception. Whenever exception occurs, I want to handle the exception. Here guys, handling is different and conveying the message to the user is different. What I want to do is, whenever exception occurred, I want to send some meaningful message to the user saying that there is some problem in our application. Please try again after some time. I want to send some exception details to my user. Some problem occurred. Please try again after some time. So now that exception handling logic I want to implement in my project. That exception handling logic I want to implement in my project. So here, that exception handling logic we can implement in two ways, guys. We can implement the exception handling logic in the two ways. First one is local exception handling and the second one is global exception handling. First one is local exception handling and the second one is global exception handling. Now, local exception handling nothing but controller specific. It is applicable for only for that particular controller. It is controller specific exception handling. That means whenever exception occurs in that controller, then only it will be handled. If an exception occurs in other controller, it is not going to handle. So that is called local exception handling. Local exception handling is also called as controller specific exception handling. Now suppose in my project, multiple controllers are available. If an exception occurs in any class in the project, in any controller in the project, then I want to handle that exception. That is called global exception handling. This is application specific, project specific. In the project, multiple classes will be available. Exception can come in any class. Exception can occur in any class. When exception occurred in any class, if you want to handle that, then you need to go for a concept called global exception handling. If you want to implement a handling logic for a particular class, then you need to go for local exception handling. Are you able to follow me? Now let us see how I am going to implement my local exception handling. So here I have a class. When this class is executing, when this method is executing, this line will give arithmetic exception. Whenever arithmetic exception occurs in my project, I want to send error page to the user. Some problem occurred. Please try again after some time. Please try again after some time. Like that, I want to give error message to the user. Now see here, in order to handle that, I will write one method, public string handle arithmetic exception. What is the purpose of this method? This method is responsible to handle only arithmetic exception. Now, let us take that arithmetic exception. Let us take that arithmetic exception object as a parameter. I'm taking arithmetic exception as a parameter. Then I'm going to return one page, that is error page. I will return one page called error page. Now, when this method should be called, when this method should be called, whenever arithmetic exception occurred in the project, then only this method should be called. For this, we will write one annotation called @exception handler. We write a method called @exception handler. Class is equal to arithmetic exception dot class. Sorry, value is equal to arithmetic exception dot class. Arithmetic exception dot class. Got it? Now here we are having handle arithmetic exception method. What is the purpose of handle arithmetic exception method? Whenever arithmetic exception occurred in this page, then I want to call this method. Now here I'm going to return error page. Now go and create here whatever this I'm accessing that now. Here I can get that AE.get message. AE.get message, it will tell me what is the reason of the exception. String message is available. Generally, we are going to log that message. Exception will be logged. So for this class, we are going to get the logger object. So we know how to get the logger. Private logger is equal to logger factory dot get logger of demo controller dot class. I'm getting the logger for this class. Now here I'm going to specify logger dot error of message. So what is the meaning of logger dot error dot message? Whatever the exception occurred, why that exception occurred, I'm logging that message. Okay, and I'm returning error page. Now let me create one error page in the templates, new other HTML file. Now that file I should create in the template. The file name I'm giving as error page.html. In this file, I will write some message. Some problem occurred. Please try after some time. Whenever exception occurred, for the user, I want to display this message. Okay. Now go to demo controller. Observe. I have a class called controller class. Inside the controller class, I have a method. In that method, I'm having some logic. When that logic is executing, there is a chance of getting the exception. Integer I is equal to 10 by 0. When you divide any number with the 0, that will give arithmetic exception. Whenever exception occurred, I want to handle that. For that, I am writing one method. That method name can be anything. This is important. What is this? @exception handler. What is the meaning of @exception handler? @exception handler value is equal to arithmetic exception dot class. That means in this class, in this controller class, whenever arithmetic exception occurred, then immediately this method should be executed. What this method is doing? It is getting what is the reason of the exception. It is logging that exception, logger dot error message, then return error page. What is error page? It is another HTML page. Okay. Now let me create one more method, guys. Here, good evening message is available. And let me give the URL, that is which method is available. And let me go for another method. It is simply I'm giving as message. Now here I'm giving welcome to Ashok IT. So there are two methods available. In one method, exception will occur. Get a greet message, get a wish message. Okay. So now let me keep it as greet. and let me keep it as wish. So there are two methods available in the controller. Exception will occur in which method, guys? This method will give the exception. What about this method? It is a normal execution. Okay. Run our application. Run as boot application. Clear the console. Clear the console. Demo controller. First, let me go for the greet URL. Localhost colon 8080/greet. What happened? We are able to access that method that is returning view page. That view page also we are able to access. It is returning a view page. That view page we are able to access. Now let me go for this wish method. Let me go for wish method. This method will give you arithmetic exception. For arithmetic exception, there is a handler. Okay. Now let me take this URL pattern wish localhost colon 8080/wish. What happened? Exception stack trace is coming or it is handled. Earlier when exception occurred, what happened? Suppose for example, if I remove this method from here, if I remove that method from there, handler is available or handler is not available? Handler is not available. Now send the request. What happened? White label error page is coming. So whenever exception occurred, immediately white label error page is coming. I don't want to send white label error page to the end user. End user will understand this page or end user cannot understand this page. End users cannot understand. They don't know what is arithmetic exception. They don't know what is HTTP 500. They don't know what is white label error. So we should not send exception to the end users like this. Whenever exception occurred, we need to handle that and we need to log that exception and we need to return some meaningful information to the end user. Now I'm adding this method, then send a request. Now what happened? Exception is coming to the user and error page is loading. Error page is loading. Let me send the request to the first method, greet method. What is happening? Actual response is coming. Why actual response is coming? In that method, there is no exception. In that method, there is no exception. That method is executing as expected. That method is executing as expected. But when I go for wish method, what is happening? Exception is coming. Whenever request comes to that, exception is coming. Which exception? Arithmetic exception. Whenever arithmetic exception occurred in the project, immediately our Spring Boot will check, is there any handler for that exception? Is there any handler available for that exception? Within the class, handler is available or handler is not available? Handler is available. When the handler is available, what is happening? That a handler will be executed. First check. This is a handler for which exception? Arithmetic exception. Which exception we are getting? Arithmetic exception only. For example, here instead of this, let me go for string s is equal to null value s dot length. S dot length. What exception will come now? Null pointer exception will come. Now go here and go for wish. What happened now? White label error is coming. Why not error page? Why error page is not coming? My method is responsible to handle only arithmetic exception. But in the method, which exception is coming? Null pointer exception is coming. Are you clear? Now what I want to do is, whether it is null pointer or whether it is arithmetic exception, I want to handle that. Then here, instead of taking arithmetic exception, if I take only exception like this, what will happen? This is a super class for all the exception. Whenever exception occurred in my class, immediately it will check, is there any handler available or not? Yes, handler is available. When the handler is available, that a handler method will be executed. What is that handler method doing? Whatever the exception occurred, it is printing in the log file, then it is returning the error page. It is a view name. It is a view name. Now go here and send this. Handled or not? Go to the first method, send the request. Working or not? Yes. So for the first method, when I'm sending a request with a greet, so it is executing as expected. It is storing the message in the model attribute. It is returning the view page. In the view page, I'm able to get the message that is loaded as expected. It is loaded as expected. But when I send a request for second method, it is giving null pointer exception. When the null pointer exception occurred, this method is executing because this is @exception handler value is equal to exception.class. What is the meaning of exception.class? Any kind of exception. It can be null pointer, it can be arithmetic, it can be class cast exception, it can be SQL exception, anything. Any exception should be handled by my handler method. Where I am writing my handler method? Where I am writing my handler method? Now, initially, we discussed one concept called AOP, aspect oriented programming. Now, this is my business logic or this is my secondary logic? Secondary logic. Now, in my class, I am writing the business logic and I am writing the secondary logic. Recommended or not recommended? Not recommended. Why? Because now here, first problem, this will work only for one class. Now, can we try for another class now? Can I create one more controller and can I check this is working or not? Yes. Now, demo controller is available. Let me go for another controller called user controller. Let me take another class called user controller. User controller. In the user controller also, I will write one method. Let us make this as a controller by writing one annotation @controller. Let me take this method. Okay. Now I am taking user. Okay. URL pattern is user. So now here also here exception will occur. Integer I is equal to 10/0. Integer I is equal to 10/0. Now arithmetic exception will occur. In the demo controller, null pointer exception will occur. What is my handler is doing? Is it for particular exception? It is for all the exceptions. All the exception. Okay. Now let us start our project. Clear. Run this. First, let me go for demo controller method. /greet is available. Okay. Go here. Now /greet. /greet having any problem or no problem in the code? No problem in the code. Enter. Working as expected? Yes, it is working. Now go for wish method. Wish method having a problem or does not have a problem? Wish method is having a problem. What is the problem? Null pointer exception. Now here /wish. What happened now? Exception occurred. Handled or not handled? Handled. Who handled that? My exception handler is available. Whenever exception occur in this method, immediately handler method is executed. What that handler is doing? It is logging the exception. Can you see here? It is logging the exception. Now demo controller null value is coming. We'll see why that message coming as a null value. Now here logger.error, I want to log that message. After that, what I'm doing? Returning the error page. What is the meaning of returning the error page? That view page is loaded. Some problem occurred in our project. Please try after some time. I will display that message. Now go to user controller. In the user controller, /user is available. What is the problem? Arithmetic exception. Now take the URL, go here, /user. What happened? White label error. Why white label error? Why white label error? In this class, handler is available or handler is not available? Handler is not available. So if I want to handle, I need to take this method and I need to keep this method here also. I need to keep this method here also. Now it will be handled for user controller also. Logger object is required. So I want to log the exception. User controller dot class. Okay. So whenever exception occurs in the user controller, I want to execute my handler. Now go here /user. Now what happened? Handle. Now go for /wish. Handle. Now go for greet. Working. So here wish method having a problem. User method also having a problem. But if you see in the user controller, I am writing the handler method. In the demo controller also I am writing the handler method. So if I write the methods in every class, how many places I have to write it? My project having 100 controllers. This is called local exception handling. The exception will be handled for only particular class. So how many ways we can handle the exception? Two ways. What are the two ways? One is local exception handling. Another one is global exception handling. What is the meaning of local exception handling? Controller specific handling. In which controller you will write the handler, only that class exceptions can be handled. But in the project, this is recommended or this is recommended. Global exception handling is recommended. That means I want to separate my business logic and the secondary logic. That's where AOP comes into picture. What is AOP? Aspect oriented programming. What is the main purpose of the AOP? To separate business logic and cross-cutting logic. Cross-cutting logic nothing but exception handling, logging, exception handling, logging, transaction, security, all these things comes under secondary logic. Currently in my project, in the single class, primary logic is available, secondary logic is also available. If I do like this, it is not recommended. It is not recommended. Now, I don't want to write exception handler in any class, in any controller. I want to separate it. I want to implement global exception handling. Global exception handling means in the whole project, wherever exception occur, then my handler should be executed. Are you clear? Now currently in the demo controller handler is available. In the user controller also handler available. Suppose if I remove from the user controller, this handler will execute. For this exception, handler will not execute. Only for the demo controller, handler is working. For user controller, handler not working. See that? In the demo controller, greet method, no problem for that. Go for wish method, problem is there, handler is executed. Go for user, execute this, handler not executed. Why handler not executed for user controller? There is no handler. Where is the handler method? Demo controller. So it is local handling or global handling? Local handling. In the project, local handling will be there or global handling will be there? Global handling will be available. Now, see here. I will remove this from demo controller also, because if I keep it in the controller, it is becoming local. I want to make it global. Now, stop this. Stop the server. Let me create one package called exception package. I will create one class inside a package called in.ashokid.exception, and here I will create one app exception handler. Class name can be anything. I'm giving the meaningful name. What is the name I'm giving? App exception handler. What is the purpose of this class? To handle the global exceptions in the project. In order to do that, for this method, we need to write one annotation called controller advice. We need an annotation called controller advice. So now, when you go for controller advice, it is going to work like a AOP component. It will work like a AOP component. Now keep our handler logic here. Keep our handler logic here. Now let me take my logger and I will keep the logger here. Exception handler dot class. I am going to log the exception. Now handler methods available in the controller, or it is available in the controller advice. Earlier my handler is available in the controller. Now my handler is available in the controller advice. What is the problem? If I keep the handler within the controller, it will become local exception. Now I am keeping in the controller advice. Demo controller method having a problem and user controller method also having a problem. Demo controller method will give null pointer exception. User controller method will give arithmetic exception. Got it? Now go here, run the application. Application started, clear the console, go for greet method. This is perfectly working because greet method does not have any problem. Greet method is working as expected. Now wish method available in which class? Demo controller. Now enter. When I'm sending request for the wish controller, what happened? Handle or not handle? Handle. Go for user controller. Check this. Handle or not handle? Now, my handler available in the controllers or handler available in the controller advice? Handler available in the control advice. Can I say that is a AOP component now? Yes. Business logic is separate. Secondary logic is separate. In your project, wherever exception occur, that will be handled. Wherever exception occur, that will be handled. For example, let me create one more class, new class. I'm creating one class with a name called service. Let me take it as a product service. Let me take it as a product service. How to represent this class as a service? @service. I'm writing @service. Inside this service, I'm writing one method, public string get product name by ID. Integer ID I am passing. Okay. Get product name by ID, integer ID I am passing. Return, I'm returning the name as mouse. Name as mouse. But here I will keep integer I is equal to 10 by 0. Integer I is equal to 10 by 0. There is an exception in my method. Now let me go for product controller. Let me create a class called product controller. Product controller. Product controller want to talk to product service. Okay. Let me go here and make it as a controller. Let me inject my service. Private product service. How to inject it? By using @auto wiring. Now let me write one method. In this method, I want to call product service method. Okay. Now I want to do return service dot get product name by ID. Some 100 I am passing. Okay. So the URL pattern I'm giving as product. Perfect. Now return service dot get product name. Not this. I'm doing wrong. String name. Okay. Now here model dot add attribute key comma name. Message is there and name is available. And I want to return index page. Now look at this. What my controller is doing. What my controller method is doing, guys. My controller method is calling the service method. What is there in the service method? Exception is available. Now let me run this. Run my application. Let me send a request for product controller. Exception occurring in the controller or exception occurring in the service? Exception occurring in the service. Now go here, localhost colon 8080/product. Handled or not handled? It is handled. That means, can I say global handling is working now? Yes, global handling is working. Whenever exception occur in our project, then my exception handler will execute. That is the power of controller advice. If you write this method within the controller, that is called local exception handling. If you write this method in the controller advice class, that will become global exception handling. Now tell me, what is exception? Unexpected, unwanted situation is called as exception. When exception occurs, program will terminate abnormally. In Spring Boot, we can handle the exception below 2 ways. In Spring Boot, we can handle exceptions in below 2 ways. What are those 2 ways? One is local exception handling and another one is global exception handling. What is the difference between local exception handling and global exception handling? Local exception handling means specific to a particular controller. Global exception handling means overall for the project. So in order to do this, I'm creating one exception handler like this. Okay. Now this is my controller advice class. Sorry. This is my controller advice class. So if you create a class with the controller advice annotation, inside that class, you need to write the handler method. So here I'm writing exception handler value is equal to exception dot class. Why I am giving exception dot class? Why I am giving exception dot class? Suppose if I give null pointer exception dot class, that method will be executed only when null pointer exception occurred in the project, right? But I want to execute this method for any type of exception. Then I will go for exception dot class. Exception is a super class for all the exceptions in the Java. All right. Now, so what is the purpose of AOP? Why we will go for AOP? Right. My business logic and secondary logics are separate by using at the rate controller advice. What is the purpose of controller advice? What is the purpose of at the rate exception handler? At the rate exception handler is used to execute the method whenever exception occurs. Whenever exception occurs. For example, now if I write at the rate response body, what will happen? What will happen? Error page will be coming as a response. So check it, slash product. What is coming now? Error page is coming. See here, when I send the request to this, what is the response coming? Error page. Why error page coming as a response? Because it is thinking that this is the response. But is it a response or it is a view page? View page. Then I will remove response body. If I remove the response body, dispatcher will think that this is a page. That page will be rendered in the browser. So this a handler annotation is used to specify for which exception this method should be executed. If I give here null pointer exception, this will be executed only when null pointer exception occurs. Suppose if I give this here as SQL exception, then what will happen? That method will be executed only when SQL exception occurs. I want to execute that method for all the exceptions. Then we can go for exception dot class. Exception dot class. That is a super class for all the exceptions in the project. What is the purpose of this annotation? It will make sure that exceptions are handled occurred in any class in the project. It is not specific to a particular class. In any class, if exception occurred, then that will be handled by my controller advice. Global handling. Perfect. So with this we understood. What is exception handler annotation and what is controller advice and how to implement local exception handling in the Spring Boot and how to implement global exception handling in the Spring Boot. Anybody having any questions? Anybody having any questions? No. Huh? That will come in the REST API. Response entity is a REST API component. Easy or difficult? Simple. Yeah, we'll come to that. Okay, guys. Now see here, I am having one. Where is that? Demo controller is available. In the demo controller, there is a method which will give the exception. Demo controller is available. In that, there is a method which will give the exception. Wantedly, I'm क्या हो रहा भाई? भाग जा रहे हो? Perfect. Now with this we understood what is how to handle exceptions in Spring Web MVC. How to handle exceptions in Spring Web MVC. What is local exception handling? What is local exception handling and what is global exception handling? Local exception handling and global exception handling. Perfect. And what is controller advice and exception handler? What is @controller advice and @exception handler? What is the purpose of exception handler annotation, guys? It is used to execute when that particular exception occurred. Can I write multiple handler methods? Suppose, for example, I want to execute this method for all the exception, but whenever null pointer exception occurred, I want to execute a separate method. Okay, null pointer exception. So here I am writing null pointer exception. Here I am writing null pointer exception. Can we do like this also? Yeah. What is the meaning of this method? What is the meaning of these methods now? Whenever null pointer exception occurred, this method will be executed. For other exceptions, it will be executed, right? For particular exception, you can write the handler. For all the exceptions also, you can write the handler. Are you clear? Good. So now, in the future, we are going to discuss what is user-defined exception, how to create our own exception, how to handle our own exceptions. In the REST API, I'm going to cover that part. Exception handling, again, we are going to discuss in the RESTful services. In the REST API, I will explain how to handle user-defined exceptions also. What is the meaning of user-defined exception? What is the meaning of user-defined exception? Creating our own exception. When to create our own exception, how to handle our own exceptions, those we will discuss in the REST API classes. Now we got the basic idea. What is exception handling? What is local handling? What is global handling? What is the difference between local handling and global handling? Perfect. This is sufficient for now. Extension for this will come in the REST API classes. Even if you change the sequence also, no problem. The reason is whenever exception occurs, first it will check with that exception, do we have a handler or not? That is catch block. That is different. This is different. That is the hierarchy. Here hierarchy will not work. So whenever exception occurs, first it will check with that exception handler is available or not. Null pointer exception, handler available. Execute the second method. Arithmetic exception occurred, handler not available. Then go for default exception. Right. Please show error page HTML. Nothing is there, man. It is just a dummy message I am giving there. Dummy message I am giving there. Error page is having my dummy message. Okay, fine guys. So with this, successfully we completed our web MVC. Okay. Yeah. Perfect, guys. So let's quickly revise what we learned so far in our classes. Let me summarize everything. How much time we spent? More than 1 month, na? 1 month or more than 1 month? When our batch started? 8th March. Okay. Yes, guys. Let us see quickly here. As of now, what we have learned. Initially, we learned, first point we learned, what is a framework? Quickly, I want you to respond to my questions. What is framework? Framework is a ready-made software. How many types of frameworks available? Web frameworks, ORM frameworks, application development frameworks are available. Then later we have seen what is a Spring. What is a Spring, guys? Spring is a framework that is used to develop end-to-end application. That's why Spring is called as application development framework. And what is the Spring architecture? What is the Spring architecture? Spring is developed in modular fashion. What are the modules available? Initially, there are 7 modules. Later, it came to 6. Now, here 20 plus modules are available. What are the core important modules in the Spring? Core module, AOP module, context module, ORM, DAO, Web MVC modules are available. What is the purpose of Spring Core module? What is the Spring Core? Come on, guys. What is Spring Core? Spring Core module is the base module of the Spring framework. What is the main responsibility of the Spring Core module? What is the main responsibility of the Spring Core module? It is used to handle classes with loosely coupling. It is used to perform dependency injection. It will manage our classes and classes dependencies. Okay. The important concepts in the core module, IOC container and dependency injection. Can you tell me what is IOC container? Can you tell me what is IOC container? IOC container is used to manage and collaborate dependencies among the objects in the application. How many ways we can start the IOC container? Application context and bean factory in the Spring Core. Then we discussed about what is a Spring Bean. We discussed about what is Spring Bean, and we discussed what is a dependency injection. What is dependency injection? Come on. The process of injecting one class object into another class object is called as dependency injection. How many ways we can perform the dependency injection? What is that? Constructor injection, setter injection, field injection. There is another way called interface injection is also available. We have not discussed that as of now. There is a concept called interface injection is also available. Will come in the future classes. As of now, how many types of injections we know? 3 types: constructor injection, setter injection, and field injection. Then we discussed about bean scope. What is bean scope? Come on, guys. What is the bean scope? It is used to represent how many objects should be created for a bean. What is the default scope of the bean? Singleton. That means only one object will be created. If I want to create multiple objects, then we need to go for prototype, and we are having auto wiring. What is auto wiring? What is auto wiring? It is used to automatically identify the dependent object and inject into target object. How many places we can perform auto wiring? Constructor level, setter level, variable level. Now, when there is a auto wiring concept, by name, by type comes into picture. What is by name? What is by type? What is by name? What is by type? By name means based on the name of the variable, it will identify the dependent object. By type means based on the type of the bean, it will identify the dependent. There is a chance of getting ambiguity. How to overcome the ambiguity? by using primary attribute. Okay. Now, how to configure Java class as a Spring Bean? Either by using XML or by using annotation. How to get the bean object from IOC? Context dot get bean method. What are the annotations we know? Component, repository, service, auto wiring, configuration, bean, scope, depends on, auto void, at the rate qualifier. Like that, there are several annotations available. What is the bean life cycle? What is bean life cycle? Forgot. Init method and a destroy method. If you want to execute some life cycle operations on the bean, then we will go for bean life cycle. How many ways we can execute bean life cycle? 3 ways. XML approach, annotation approach, interfaces also. Discussed or not? Now, I have taken a class called motor, stop, start, init method. I remember the class name also which I have taken for that. Bean life cycle. If you want to perform some life cycle operation, post construct pre-destroy. After the object created, I want to execute some logic. Before object deletion, I want to execute some logic. That is called life cycle operations. To perform life cycle operations, we are going for bean life cycle methods. How many ways we can execute life cycle methods? 3 ways. Programmatic approach, declarative approach, annotation approach. Okay. After that, we discussed what is the depends on. What is the depends on? If one object functionality required for the other object functionality, then we will go for depends on. Then after we started, the most important point, Spring Boot. What is the Spring Boot? Come on, what is Spring Boot? Speak out. What is Spring Boot? Spring Boot is an approach to develop Spring applications with minimal or less configuration. Can I say Spring Boot is a replacement for the Spring? Spring Boot is not replacement for the Spring. Then what is the Spring Boot? Extension for the Spring. So Spring Boot is one approach to develop Spring applications with the less configuration. Spring Boot is an enhancement for the Spring, not replacement for the Spring. What are the differences between Spring and Spring Boot? Configurations we need to manage in the Spring, but configurations are automated in the Spring Boot. What are the advantages of going with the Spring Boot? Form starters are available, dependency version management, auto configuration, embedded server, actuator. What is the meaning of form starter? Dependencies we are configuring in the form.xml. You no need to write many dependencies. If you add web starter, everything will come to develop and run the web application. Security starter, if you add that, security will come automatically for your project. Next one, what is auto configuration? Come on guys, what is auto configuration? Spring Boot will identify what configuration is required for our project. It will identify that and it will provide that configuration. Then next one, embedded server. What is embedded server? You no need to deploy the boot application into a server. Whenever you run the boot application, embedded server will come by default. What are the embedded servers available? Tomcat and Jetty. Do you know how to change from Tomcat to Jetty? Yes, right. What is the actuator? Actuators are going to provide monitoring capacity for our application, right? What is the start class in the Spring Boot? What is the start class in the Spring Boot? Come on. That is the entry point for boot application execution. Can I have more than one start class in the Spring Boot? No. For project, there will be only one start class. Then what is boot application annotation? What is boot application annotation? That is equal to 3 annotations. At the rate Spring Boot configuration, at the rate component scanning, at the rate auto configuration. What is the component scanning in the Spring Boot? Identifying the bean classes that are available in the project. Identifying the bean classes available in the project based on the base package naming convention. What is the base package naming convention? What is the base package naming convention? in which class our, in which package our start class is available. That is called base package. All the remaining packages should start with the base package name. What is Spring application.run method will do? What is Spring application.run method will do? That is going to start our boot application. It will load the bootstrap context. It will start the listeners. It will print the banner. It will create the IOC container. It will call the runner and it will return the reference of the IOC container. How IOC container will start in the Spring Boot? Very important question. How IOC will start in the Spring Boot? How IOC will start in Spring Boot? Did we discuss or not? How IOC will start in the Spring Boot? Based on the starter. If you have a normal starter, annotation config application context. If you have a web starter, annotation config web server context application context. If you have a reactive starter, very lengthy class name will be available to start the IOC container. Who is responsible to start IOC container in the Spring Boot? Programmer or run method? Run method. In 3 ways it will start the IOC container. It depends upon which is starter. It depends upon which type of project you create. Is it standalone project? Is it web project? Is it reactive project? Based on that, it is going to start the IOC container. And we discussed about how to create a boot application. How to create boot application? 2 ways. From IDE we can create, and by using initializer also we can create the boot application. Then after Spring Boot discussion completed, we discussed about the data JPA. Okay. So what we have learnt in the data JPA? First point we discussed what is Spring Data JPA. What is the Spring Data JPA? What is Spring Data JPA? What is Spring Data JPA? It is used to develop persistence layer in the application. When already JDBC Hibernate available, why we need to go for data JPA? Less coding. To avoid the boilerplate code in the persistence layer, we are going for data JPA. Now here, what is the data source? What is the data source? Connection properties. Whatever the connection properties we are writing, those connection properties are called as data source properties. Then next one, what is the entity? What is entity? The Java class which is mapped to database, that is called as entity class. What are JPA repositories? What are JPA repositories? What are JPA repositories? CRUD repository, JPA repository, paging and sorting, query by example executor. CRUD repository, JPA repository, paging and sorting, query by example executor. JPA repositories are available. What is the difference between CRUD repository and JPA repository? CRUD repository versus JPA repository. Come on, tell me. CRUD repository will support only for CRUD operation. JPA repository, CRUD operation plus sorting plus query by example. Now pagination also. What are the methods available? What methods available in CRUD repository? Can you tell me how many methods are there? 12 methods are available, right? Find by ID, save method, save all method, count, find by ID, exist by ID, delete by ID, delete all these things are available. What is the upsert method in the data JPA? What is the upsert method in the data JPA? Save and update, right? Insert plus update will done by save method. So in the Hibernate, save or update available, but in the JPA only save all. That is used for insertion as well as for updation. That's why it is called as a upsert method. What is a find by method in the data JPA? What is find by method in data JPA? Based on the name of the method, query will be constructed and query will be executed. What is the custom query in the data JPA? What is the custom query in the data JPA, guys? @query. We can write our own query and we can execute our own query. How to execute a custom query? @query annotation. What is the difference between SQL and HQL queries? SQL versus HQL. What is the difference? SQL queries are database dependent queries. HQL queries are database independent queries. What is the dialect class? What is the dialect class? The class which is responsible to convert a HQL query to SQL query. When we are writing the HQL query cannot execute in the database directly. Every HQL query should be converted to SQL query. That conversion will be taken care by dialect class. So do I need to set the dialect class, or it will auto detect with the driver class? Dialect class will be auto detected with the driver class. So we know what is dialect class. Then after we discussed how to perform non-select operation using query annotation, @query annotation. Can we perform update operation by using query? @transactional, @modifying. So we can perform non-select operations also by using custom query. For that we need to write @transactional and @modifying annotation. And we discussed what is a generator. What is a generator? What is generator? Come on, guys. It is used to generate the value for primary key columns. What is a custom generator? What is a custom generator? If you want to generate the primary key value based on your project requirement, then you need to go for custom generator. What is a composite primary key? What is a composite primary key? Come on. If your table wants to have more than one primary key, then we will go for composite primary key option. After that, we discuss what is the Spring Boot profile. What is Spring Boot profile? Did we discuss that or not? No. Let me show you. That is the last topic that I explained in the data JPA. I'm opening our notes now. We will understand. I explained you don't even remember the topic. Forget about the answer. First of all, you did not remember the topic. Arey, kahan se aaya ye topic? I covered in the class also, man. I showed you dev environment, sit environment, UAT, pilot, production. If you want to configure environment specific properties, we will go for profiles. Application underscore. Let me open our IDE. Proof. In the last example, I have created this. What is this? Dev properties, sit properties, and we need to activate a profile. What is the purpose of profile in the Spring Boot? What is the purpose of profiles in the Spring Boot? If you want to maintain environment specific configuration, then we will go for profile. And we discussed one more concept, timestamping in the data JPA. What is timestamping in data JPA? What is the timestamping in the data JPA? @creation timestamp, @update timestamp. Now you see what topics we discussed in the data JPA. What is Spring Data JPA? What is the data source? What is entity class? What are the repositories? CRUD repository versus JPA repository. Methods available in the CRUD repository. Upsert method. Find by methods. Custom query. SQL versus HQL. Dialect class. Non-select operation. Generator. Custom generator. Composite primary key. Timestamping. Profiles in the data JPA. Pagination in the data JPA. Pagination and sorting. Did we discuss pagination and sorting? Yes. What is pagination? Based on the page size and page number, we are going to get the records. And we discussed about query by example. What is the purpose of query by example? It is used to prepare the query based on the entity class data. When you are implementing dynamic search operation, then you will go for query by example. What is the profile in the Spring Boot? What is profile in the Spring Boot? Right. Based on the environment, we will load the properties. When my project is deploying to dev environment, dev properties I want to load. When my project is deploying to SIT properties I want to load. When my project deploying to production properties we have to load. Spring Boot profiles, very important topic. What is a Spring Boot profile? How to activate Spring Boot profile? Do you know that? How to activate Spring Boot profile? Profile spring.profile.active. Spring.profile.active. You see which profile you want to load, that we are configuring here. Spring.profiles.active is equal to dev. What is the meaning of that? Dev properties will be loaded. When I am deploying the production project to other environment, then I will change it to sit. Then what will happen? Sit profile will be loaded. Got it? You guys are not following the notes. I have a proof. Otherwise, you will say, sir, you did not explain the topic. Right. See, guys, how many things we have learned? All these concepts we learned in the Spring Core. And these topics we have learned from Spring Boot. These are topics we learned from Data JPA. These are topics we learned in the Web MVC. Okay. What next? REST API, microservices, and Spring Security. So another 1 month to 45 days it will take to cover REST API development and microservices development and how to implement security in our project. I mean, Spring Security basically. Good. Runner I have added here. What is the runner in the Spring Boot? Two types of runners. One is application runner and command line runner. All these topics I covered in the class or not? Now open our syllabus copy and check it. Whatever I have mentioned in the syllabus document, everything is covered or not? Except REST API, microservices. These are starting from Monday. So from Monday, we are going to work on microservices development. To develop the microservices, we need to know REST API development. Good. Just revise the concepts. Read it. All of you, please read the questions at least. What we have learned. That is not Spring architecture. Spring architecture means modules. Whatever the topics I mentioned, all these are interview questions. All these are interview questions. How many interview questions I covered? 19 plus 11, 30, 30 plus 20, 50, 50 plus 30, almost 80 questions. Yeah, read it. I completed. How much you learned, that is important thing. Now, read these things from the Spring Boot, whatever we have learned. Completed. Yeah, read the data JPA concepts. Guys, see here, read this. What are you writing? What is writing? Read the points. Recall whether you remember the topic or not. You need to study all those topics. Guys, come on, read the points. Read the points. Completed? Good. Now, are you feeling confident? We know at least 60% of the Spring Boot. Now we know 60% of the Spring Boot. To make it 100%, REST API, microservices, and security is important. Okay. Guys, for this, in the YouTube, I have uploaded 50 interview questions on the WebMVC. I think I prepared 2-3 years back. You can go through those videos. I will tell you that the playlist will be available. Yeah. Spring MVC interview questions and answers. I have uploaded 6 videos here, guys. So total 50 questions I have covered in this video. I prepared the document, each and every. ये कहाँ से आता भाई? हर वीडियो पे उसका ऐड चलाते हैं यार. हाँ, right. So like this, I prepared 50 questions on the Spring Web MVC module. Okay. So I want you people to go through this video and understand. Guys, I don't have that PDF. I prepared that 3 years back. I lost that PDF. You just go through the video which is there. You can, if you want, you can write it, no problem. 50 interview questions I covered on the Web MVC. These are frequently asked interview questions for freshers as well as experienced people as well. Let me share this playlist. Yeah. Yes. Perfect. Yeah, guys, in the notes, I have given the YouTube link for that. So if you access that link, then you can access all the 50 questions and answers from Spring WebMVC only. From the Spring WebMVC, total. Yeah. So total 50 interview questions and answers I have explained on the WebMVC. I'm giving the video link also here. I want you people to go through that today and complete it. So tomorrow, what we need to discuss? All day. No. Huh. Yeah, all of you go through all these things that we have discussed so far. Let me separate the summary. Yeah, I will keep that notes. Okay, fine. So tomorrow we will see anything which is missing in the WebMVC or any interview question that is required. Interview question, I think almost all I have covered as part of that 50 playlist. You can go through them. If any other topic is missing or if any doubts that you are having, that we can discuss in the tomorrow session. Tomorrow also class is there. Tomorrow class is there. So if any pending topic is available, I will explain. If any doubts you are having, I will clarify those doubts. Fine. And how is your analysis going on? JRTP. Good or not good? Entity and interface खत्म हो गया. हाँ, Java classes. Java classes. Huh? Someone is asking how to manage transactions. Yes, we'll discuss that in the REST API. How to manage the transactions and all. Okay. Fine, guys. So please practice all the concepts. If you want, I can share my boot workspace. No problem. Do you want? What you have practiced, man? I will share it. No issue. For Spring Boot, I can share. For project, I don't want to share because project that you need to develop. Fine, guys. Thank you. We'll see you tomorrow. Please go through those questions and go through the answers as well. We'll see you in the tomorrow's class. Hey.